Hello and welcome back to the port. I'm the Gallifrey Major, and today we're looking at doing shipping forecasts as a destroyer. So the first thing you should always do when you go into a game is do what we call the shipping forecast. Open up the menu, have a look at the enemy team, pick out any particular ships that you need to be aware of, and pick out any divisions so you can work out where people are on the map. So what you're going to be looking to do is to go through the destroyers, the cruisers, and the battleships. So this is our first episode where we're going through as a destroyer, and so we've got 3 introductions to games coming up, all at different tiers, all with different types of destroyers. And so I'm going to go through my shipping forecast for that game, but then also I'm going to point out some helpful tips and hints for doing a shipping forecast at that tier, for like give or take a couple of tiers, things to be aware of, and then hopefully at the end we'll do like a nice conclusion. So let's look into the first one. So let's take a look at a tier 2 game. So here I am playing the Russian destroyer, the Dirtsky, and I'm having a quick look at their shipping forecast. I have to bear in mind I'm not a very gunny destroyer. I've got lots of torpedoes and that's about it. So I'm going to be cautious of any kind of gunny destroyers. So usually I'm going to be looking out for maybe the British and the Americans. But here we can see that we've got Dirtsky and Whack Attack in the other team. So they're mostly torpedo boats, not a lot of guns, but it does mean that if I kind of encounter them, I kind of got to get into like a torp fest with them, which can be a bit of a downside. Now the rest of their team is mostly cruisers, so lots of guns. Cruisers at this tier kind of just have guns all over, but there's nothing really that special. And then again, there's also no battleships. But one thing we should probably go over as well is like there's tier 3. So at tier 3, obviously the destroyers start to get a bit more potent, the cruisers start to get sonar. Now talking about sonar, the sonar on cruisers is split into almost like 2 tiers. There's the Germans and then there's everyone else. So when it comes to the cruisers, we have to bear in mind that their sonar range for everybody else is 3.4 kilometers. And for the Germans, we're looking at about 4.9 kilometers. So if it's German, you want to stand off a little bit further than you normally would. Now it's always worth bearing in mind that you have a guaranteed acquisition range, and that's 2 kilometers normally. That does change slightly higher up, but here it's going to be 2 kilometers. So you definitely don't want to be getting closer than 2 kilometers if you're in a smoke screen. Like, you have to bear that in mind. But also you have to bear in mind that the sonar is there. Now when it comes to battleships, they'll obviously be new at tier 3. But there's not really much to mention about them. Usually they're pretty inaccurate unless you get really close to one of them. But what they can be is they can be bristling with secondaries. So if you're having to make a quick run towards one, bear that in mind, because their secondaries will chew you up if they have the opportunity. So now let's take a look at a tier 4 and 5 game. So on the other team we have 2 destroyers. We always look at destroyers first, because as a destroyer they're the things that we're going to bumble into with the shortest amount of notice, because of their detectability range. So we have a Fubuki, good concealment, so she'll probably see us first, but she'll be weak and she's more of a torpedo boat. So if we can actually get guns on, we should be able to dispatch her quite quickly. Now we have the Gady. Now the Gady is an interesting one. She can have a really nice gun upgrade, so possibly she could be on par / league. She could hurt us quite a bit as well. But also German tier 5 up and British tier 5 up come with sonar. So the Gady comes with German destroyer sonar, which has a range of 3.9 kilometers. Now the Königsberg, German cruiser tier 4, another thing that we should really be cautious of, because she will have a sonar range of 5.1 kilometers. So we're going to want to stand off from that cruiser as much as possible, just because it's going to be quite potent to us. Then we have the Emily Batang. Now she's basically an everybody else kind of cruiser, so she's got good HE, but her sonar range will be 3.7 kilometers. So we don't have to stand off as much. Now we have an Omaha on the other team, again sonar 3.7, so Leander. Have to bear in mind, Leander comes with smoke, so she could disappear. But also actually the Leander is a tier 5, so she will have a 3.9 kilometer sonar. And then we have to also bear in mind we're looking out for things like the Graf Spee and the Nuremberg, and they will have a sonar range of 5.2 kilometers, so that's something to bear in mind. Also at tier 5 we start to see some of the first radar cruisers. At the moment the first one introduced to the game is the Bodoni, the Russian tier 5 cruiser. Now that has a radar range of 8 kilometers, but it only lasts for 15 seconds, so if it goes off she's only going to be able to get like maybe 1, maybe 2 volleys off you. But that's something to bear in mind. Against the Bodoni, you probably, if you think she may have radar equipped or radar ready to use, you want to stand up a bit. Now, the Tier 4 and Tier 5 battleships, again, nothing much really special here. They're just bristling with secondaries. They're getting slightly more accurate, but it's not too bad. I guess things to always mention is like the battle cruisers, like the Congo and the Ismail. They're fast, but they don't turn that well. Whereas like the slower battleships, like the New Mexico, they turn quickly. But they're also quite slow, so how far you have to lead with your torpedoes isn't that much. Now, as we're looking at a game of Capture the Base on Haven, we might as well mention that we spawned on the left. So what we're going to do, we're going to swing out to that left. No point me going to the middle, no point me going to the centre. I want to swing out to the left, I want to get some spotting, I want to get some like flanking manoeuvre, I want to help my team as much as possible. So a quick wrap up of Tier 4 and Tier 5. Things to take away as a destroyer that I'm considering. You want to know who's gunny, who's not gunny, who's going to hurt you, who's not going to hurt you when it comes to looking at destroyers. Also, when looking at destroyers, you need to take into consideration that the British have a sonar range of 3.5 kilometers from Tier 5 up, and then the Germans have a sonar range of 3.9 kilometers at Tier 5. We also need to take into consideration the cruisers. Now, cruisers at Tier 4, they normally have a sonar range of 3.7 kilometers. Unless they're German, then they've got a sonar range of 5.1 kilometers. Also, Tier 5, everyone else has got a sonar range of 3.9 kilometers, and the Germans have a sonar range of 5.2 kilometers. And then last but not least, we have radar. Now, this is only the Bodoni at the moment, but the Bodoni has a radar range of 8 kilometers, and that only lasts for 15 seconds. So now let's take a look at Tier 6 and Tier 7. So first of all, I'm going to have a quick look at their destroyers. On the other team, we have an Akatsuki. So I'm a Jervis, which is like a mid-range destroyer. So the Akatsuki, she's going to be weak, torpedo bow, but she might see me first. So I need to take that into consideration. But also I should be able to outgun her. Now, we also have a Z-23, a Tier 7 German destroyer. Now, that will come with pretty good sonar, with a detectability range of 4.4 kilometers. So if I get into a Duke off with her, I have to bear that in mind, because my sonar range is only 3.5 kilometers. So if she finds me, I kind of got to pop a smoke, and I kind of got to keep running. But my advantage is her sonar will only last for 92 seconds, whereas my sonar will last 180 seconds. So if I can like bump into her, make sure she's got a sonar on, wait a minute and a half, I can come back and I might be able to get her, fingers crossed. But I have to bear in mind that she's quite gunny. Now, what's next? We have the Shores, a Russian Tier 6 cruiser. So as a Tier 6 cruiser, she will have a sonar range of 4.2 kilometers. But also, I need to bear in mind that Shores is a radar cruiser, and her radar is 9 kilometers, but it only lasts for 15 seconds. Then we have a Prince Eugen and a Hipper. So they're both German Tier 7 cruisers. So we have to bear in mind they have German sonar. So Tier 7 German sonar is 5.5 kilometers. It's almost like a baby radar. Now we also have two Gneisenhauers, a Jean Bart and an Iowa. So I guess things to mention is like the Gneisenhauers, Scharnhorst, Tirpitz do have torpedoes. So if you try and bum rush them, they might just torpedo you straight back. Another thing to mention, Tier 6 and Tier 7 battleships normally have to take the target acquisition mod as standard. This means it increases the guaranteed acquisition range for them, which means that as a destroyer, rather than it being 2 kilometers, you'll be picked up at 3 kilometers range. So it means bear that in mind when you're going around cliffs, when you're in a smoke screen and they're charging you. You don't want to, if you know where they are, you don't want to be getting any closer than 3 kilometers to a battleship if you're trying to remain undetected. So let's wrap up Tier 6 and 7. Let's start off with destroyers and sonar. German Tier 6 sonar is 4.2 kilometers, British is 3.5. German Tier 7 destroyer sonar is 4.4 kilometers and British remain at 3.5. Now let's go on to cruisers. Everybody's sonar range is 4.2 kilometers at Tier 6 and 4.4 kilometers at Tier 7. The only exception to this is the Germans, where at Tier 6 their sonar range is 5.4 kilometers and at Tier 7 it's 5.5 kilometers. Next we have to take into consideration radar. So at Tier 6, USA and UK cruisers, the tech tree ones don't come with radar, but some of the premiums do, like the Belfast, the Boise, the Indianapolis. So we need to kind of take that into mind, especially the Atlanta. Bear that in mind. So their radar range is 8.4 kilometers at tier 6, and that only lasts for 25 seconds. So it kind of has that reasonable duration, so they can give you a damn good kicking. And then at tier 7 for the UK and USA, their tech tree cruisers can actually come with radar. So that is a range of 9 kilometers, and that lasts for 30 seconds. This also then brings us on to the other radar cruisers at tier 6 and tier 7, and that's at the moment the Russians. So the tier 6 has a radar range of 9 kilometers, and that only lasts for 15 seconds. And at tier 7, the Chapayev, that has a radar range of 11.7 kilometers and a duration of 20 seconds. So as a destroyer, we really have to bear that in mind. Last but not least, from tier 6 upwards, the destroyers, the cruisers and the battleships do have access to take the target acquisition mod. Battleships have to take it as standard, whereas cruisers and destroyers do have the option to choose it or choose something else over it. So one combination that we see quite often is a Benson with a target acquisition mod. So at this tier 6 and tier 7, bear in mind that especially against battleships and sometimes against destroyers and cruisers, your guaranteed acquisition range will not be 2 kilometers but could be up to 3 kilometers. So that's how to do the shipping forecast as a destroyer. So what you're looking for is destroyers, which ones you want to avoid, which ones you are happy to encounter, depending on how gunny you are and how gunny they are, and then also like how their concealments and how that stacks against you. Also what abilities they have and how to circumvent them if need be, or how far to engage with destroyers with sonar. Also, we've taken a look at how we look at what we call the destroyer killers, or the cruisers in this game, what kind of abilities, radar, sonar they have, and what ranges in order to work out how far to space off. And then also we've looked at the battleships, the ones that we are trying to kill. So we've looked at what kind of abilities they have and how we can circumvent them, slash at higher tiers, how far to stay away from them when trying to sneak up on them. Hopefully you found this useful, and we'll be doing a shipping forecast video for cruisers coming up. If you like this kind of content, feel free to subscribe. I'm the Galloping Major, and back to the port.